This is a story about a 78-year-old American man and two Nigerian women, aged 21 and 22, who become pregnant simultaneously, leading them to choose a life of polygyny. Before you watch the video, please subscribe and like. It gives us great strength. One early spring dawn, Arthur Miller, now 78 years old, sat by his window in his modest Columbus, Ohio home, enveloped in the familiar feeling of loneliness, just as he always did. Outside, the hazy dawn air wrapped the world, and the sound of wind rustling through the budding trees occasionally mingled with the noise of cars, reminding him that the city never truly slept. Yet, each sound seemed to deepen his sense of isolation. Decades ago, he had divorced the wife he loved and raised their 3 children alone. For them, he didn't shy away from hard labor, working tirelessly from construction sites and building cleaning jobs to driving trucks, whatever work he could find. Each day was exhausting, but he lived with the sole determination to raise his children properly. At some point, people in his community began to recognize him as a remarkable father who had dedicated his life to his family. Hearing such praise brought him a small sense of fulfillment. Many years passed. By the time all 3 children were standing on their own feet, Arthur had managed to acquire a small rental property and enough retirement funds to live comfortably, though not lavishly. Outwardly, he might have seemed like a successful retiree. However, a deep, empty loneliness always resided in a corner of his heart. His children, scattered across the country, didn't visit often, and sometimes, they clashed over trivial matters. Moreover, as he aged, he feared becoming a burden to his children and those around him. Then one day, quite by chance, a new connection came into his life. A friend called him, saying a local senior community center needed volunteers for an event. The center ran various cultural exchange programs, one of which involved international students tending a community garden and sharing meals with the seniors. "If you have time, just come and have a look," his friend casually suggested. Without much thought, Arthur went. In one corner of the center's yard, people were already busy planting flowers and vegetable seedlings. Among them, 2 young women stood out. Their skin was a beautiful dark hue, and their bright expressions beamed as they continuously smiled and helped the seniors. They were Tisa, 22, and Nai, 21, originally from Nigeria, Africa. Arthur was struck by their considerate attitude. Despite their youth, they showed no hesitation in caring for the elderly and being their companions. If an old woman stumbled, they immediately offered a supporting hand. Even when communication was difficult, they conveyed their intentions through kind gestures. He found himself unconsciously looking their way again and again. After the volunteering ended, a simple potluck meal was prepared. Arthur naturally ended up sitting at the same table as the 2 women. "Are you from Nigeria?" he asked cautiously. Tisa and Nai nodded with bright smiles. "Yes, we've been studying abroad here in the US for about a year. We're studying international social work at the university," they explained. In that moment, Arthur's heart skipped strangely. There was an enormous age gap and cultural differences between them. Yet, their warm demeanor and bright smiles somehow awakened something deep within him, a warmth he had long forgotten, approaching him in an unfamiliar form. As time passed and the volunteer activity neared its end, Arthur felt a flicker of anticipation upon hearing that the 2 women would also attend the center's next event in a few days. "I'm an old man well past 70, and they're just young university students," he chided himself, yet he couldn't hide his desire to meet them again. Soon after, he met Tisa and Nai again at the next event held at the community center. They greeted each other warmly and continued the conversations they hadn't finished last time. Naturally, Arthur revealed bits of his past, and Tisa and Nai expressed deep respect for his lifelong devotion to his children. "That's truly amazing. Our parents also sacrificed a lot for their children, but they couldn't raise 3 children alone like you did, Mr. Miller," they said, looking at him with sincere admiration. From that day on, after meeting several more times through volunteer work and elderly care programs, the 3 started making private plans. Arthur felt surprisingly comfortable in situations that could have easily become awkward. Tisa and Nai called him Mr. Miller and looked up to him, keeping in touch frequently amidst their busy lives as students in the U.S. One day, Tisa and Nai initiated an invitation for a meal with Arthur. If a late dinner is too burdensome, lunch is fine too. We found a nice restaurant downtown, they suggested. Arthur readily accepted, though he inwardly questioned, why am I feeling so excited? His heart was already opening up to them. During the meal, the three shared even more stories. Tisa and Nai talked about their hometown in Nigeria, the capital Abuja, and Lagos, arguably the largest city. They spoke of the culture shock they experienced in America, the prejudices against Africa, and the futures they dreamed of. Everything was fresh and fascinating to Arthur. As the meal concluded, Tisa and Nai exchanged glances before cautiously revealing their feelings. Actually, Mr. Miller, we developed feelings for you while volunteering. You might be surprised because of your age, but we were strangely drawn to the warmth you possess. Arthur was momentarily speechless. What am I hearing right now, he thought, completely caught off guard by the unexpected confession. Words like, but I'm 78, and you're still in the prime of your youth, caught in his throat, but Tisa and Nai seemed resolute. What does age matter? We believe that if our hearts connect, that's enough. However, practical problems still flashed through Arthur's mind. His family would surely call it absurd, and societal judgment in America would be harsh. Moreover, it wasn't just one person, but two. Polygyny was illegal in the United States. Overwhelmed by complex emotions, he managed to gently deflect for the day and returned home. But afterwards, Tisa and Nai's expressions of affection continued steadily. They emphasized that rather than competing, they wanted to spend time with Arthur together. We don't care who came first. One of the values we admire is mutual consideration and cooperation. And the feelings we have for you, Mr. Miller, are so deep and precious that we don't want just one of us to monopolize them. In this peculiar situation, Arthur felt bewildered yet strangely thrilled. The thought, could I really experience something like love again at this age, brought a mix of vague excitement and confusion, amplified by the fact that there were two of them. Several months passed like this. The three met for coffee, attended volunteer activities or small events together, deepening their bond. Of course, Arthur constantly doubted himself, wondering, is this right? But deep down, a strong feeling grew that he didn't want to miss this chance. The decisive turning point came when Tisa and Nai made a unique proposal. One evening, the three gathered in a quiet coffee shop. After some hesitation, Tisa spoke carefully. Actually, in Nigeria, there's a tradition where polygyny is somewhat permitted. It varies by religion and region, but legally or customarily, families with multiple wives still exist. Arthur was baffled. What does that mean? That's illegal here in the U.S., isn't it? As he trailed off, Nai nodded. That's right. So, we were thinking, if you could love both of us, Mr. Miller, and if we truly want you as our lifelong partner, perhaps we could all move to our country? There, the three of us getting married and forming a family wouldn't be a major issue. It sounded outlandish, but their sincerity was palpable. Tisa and Nai assured him they wouldn't be jealous of each other and that if Arthur decided, the three could live together. Arthur was deeply shocked. The thought of emigrating at his age, the question of whether such a marriage could even work. But simultaneously, he recalled the loneliness of his past years in Ohio. His children were busy with their own lives and rarely visited. His relationships with neighbors and acquaintances were distant. The idea began to grow, rather than spending my final years alone like this, should I try living according to my heart's desire, just this once? From then on, the three engaged in deeper conversations. Legal issues, in the U.S. versus Nigeria, cultural conflicts, criticism back home, family reactions, Arthur faced numerous hurdles. The two women explained that even if opposed in the U.S., they could have a recognized marriage in their country. It didn't necessarily have to follow all formal legal procedures, acceptance by the tribe or local community could suffice. Finally, Arthur decided. How have I lived my life? It's the only one I have. I don't want to lose everything worrying about what others think. The thought that the remaining time was too precious to live with a closed heart became intense. Still, the decision wasn't easy. First, he had to gather his children and break the news. On the day he called his 3 children, 2 in California, 1 in Texas, for a video conference, Arthur spoke cautiously. "Dad has met 2 people. They are young ladies from Africa. They seem to like me." Even just saying that left his children confused and bewildered. "Dad, are you joking? Are you pulling our leg?" one laughed awkwardly. But when Arthur maintained a serious expression, their laughter died down. They are both Nigerian women, aged 22 and 21. Upon hearing this, the children's faces turned pale with shock and disbelief. "What? The age difference is nearly 50 years. Does that even make sense? Dad, is this some kind of scam? Are they after your money?" Suspicions and anger poured out. Arthur had expected this reaction. He calmly explained who Tisa and Nai were and the sincerity with which they approached him. Then, he delivered the most crucial point. "Dad has decided to go to Nigeria and live with both of them." Hearing this, his children seemed speechless, unable to respond. After a long silence, the eldest son finally spoke. "Dad, you can live comfortably enough here in the States. Why would you?" Arthur replied calmly, "Until now, I lived only for you kids. But now, I want to find a path where I can be truly happy." The children protested, but ultimately couldn't break Arthur's firm resolve. Especially since his assets, including the rental property and savings, were substantial, the children also worried, what if Dad takes all his assets and does something reckless? Arthur addressed this clearly. "I plan to give each of you a small portion as a gift. But I will manage most of it myself while I own it. And I might use it for my new family." Initially, the children were angrier, but over time and through conversation, their emotions somewhat subsided. They realized Arthur wouldn't listen to them anyway, and a sense of resignation set in, knowing they couldn't stop his determined will. So, about a few months later, Arthur boarded a plane from Chicago to Nigeria with Tisa and Nai. Some relatives and neighbors criticized him, saying he'd lost his mind or was surely being deceived, but he paid them no heed. Others jokingly encouraged him, remarking on his late-life adventure, but in reality, Arthur himself felt nervous and afraid. The decision to spend the rest of his life in a foreign land was not made lightly. After a long flight, they arrived in Abuja, the capital of Nigeria. However, Tisa and Nai's families lived in a village near Lagos, a city in the southwest. So, the 3 transferred planes and vehicles several times to reach Lagos. For Arthur, everything was a new sight, the cacophony of car horns, the bargaining shouts of street vendors, the people draped in colorful fabrics. The realization slowly dawned, I've truly come to a different world. Tisa and Nai made calls and met people, starting to arrange a place for Arthur to live. Their parents and relatives welcomed Arthur warmly. Although initially surprised, they remarked, in our customs, it's possible for a husband to have multiple wives. Of course, it's less common these days than traditionally, but it's not exactly frowned upon either. They temporarily rented a small house in a village near Lagos, and Tisa and Nai planned to proceed with the formal marriage process after consulting with their families. According to local customs, performing a traditional ceremony and receiving blessings from family, relatives, and village elders would effectively recognize them as husband and wife. Though everything was unfamiliar, Arthur decided to follow their lead. A few days later, the ceremony took place at the village community hall. It was completely different from an American wedding. Tisa and Nai, dressed in vibrant traditional attire, appeared with their respective family elders. Arthur changed into clothes procured locally, colorful fabrics wrapped around his body with some head ornamentation, looking quite exotic. The villagers watched this unusual wedding with curious eyes. The groom, a 78-year-old American, the brides, 2 black women aged 22 and 21. It was an unbelievable sight at first glance. However, the wedding was surprisingly festive. Traditional percussion instruments played, people danced and sang, and the village elder officiating the ceremony offered blessings to the three. For someone from such a faraway place and two of our daughters to form a family is a special bond given by heaven. Arthur's heart pounded warmly. He felt a sense of unreality, the warmth of acceptance as a foreigner, standing with his two brides beside him. After the wedding, the three officially became a family. It wasn't a marriage registered on legal documents, but one bound by tradition and local custom. Yet, everyone in the village recognized them as husband and wives. Marriage is also about legal recognition by the state, but for us, tradition and community acceptance hold greater meaning, Tisa and Nai explained. Their newlywed life together began, filled with a mix of confusion and sweetness. Arthur couldn't let his guard down, often wondering late at night, is it really okay for me to live like this? But his two wives openly expressed their affection for him and seemed to feel more solidarity than jealousy towards each other. In the mornings, the three prepared meals together, Tisa trimming vegetables, Nai making fruit juice, and having Arthur taste it. As time went on, Arthur considered buying a house in the village and starting a small business using the funds he brought from the U.S. His rental property income was already being deposited into his American bank account, so there were no immediate financial difficulties, but he wanted to find a way to stabilize their life there long term. Tisa and Nai suggested starting a small trading business between the U.S. and Nigeria. They could speak English, were fluent in the local language, and were well positioned to help Arthur. Of course, the idea of business was foreign to Arthur and wasn't easy. But his two wives were very proactive. Moreover, Tisa and Nai's families offered help, and eventually, they started a small-scale import-export venture, buying and selling goods. Given Arthur's age, he didn't take an active role but provided necessary funds and exchanged information via communication channels. Just as things seemed to be settling into a peaceful rhythm, another significant change occurred. Both Tisa and Nai became pregnant around the same time. When Arthur first heard the news, he was too shocked to react properly. The thought, could I really become a father again at this age, brought a simultaneous rush of joy and fear. But his two wives hugged each other, shedding tears of happiness. We're both carrying your child. This is truly a blessing. Only then did Arthur compose himself and slowly begin to grasp the reality of becoming a father again. He had already raised 3 children in America, who were now adults, old enough to have grandchildren themselves. Now, in a completely different land, he was welcoming new life once more. Naturally, the pregnancy and birth process were challenging. It was the first time for both wives, making it even more unfamiliar, and Arthur worried physically and mentally about facing pregnancy in his old age. Fortunately, there was a reasonably sized medical facility in a nearby area, and Tisa and Nai's relatives, experienced in childbirth, offered plenty of advice. Using the funds he brought from the U.S., Arthur renovated the house to ensure his wife's comfort. He enlarged the rooms, installed durable flooring, and put in large windows for better ventilation. He also prepared cribs, diapers, clothes, and other baby necessities. He even asked his children in the States to send items readily available there via international mail. Around mid-pregnancy, Arthur felt concerned about his American children's reactions. He called them. You have 2 new stepmothers. And they are both carrying my child now. The children were initially struck silent by the shock but didn't protest vehemently, perhaps having anticipated something like this. Do as you please, Dad. We're busy with our own lives now and don't have the energy to interfere in yours, came the somber reply. However, his youngest son offered a small comfort by saying, please send us photos when the babies are born. Finally, time passed, and the 2 babies were born around the same time. Tisa gave birth to a daughter, and Nai had a son. During the births, Arthur waited outside the delivery room, clasping his hands in prayer. When his 2 wives emerged safely holding their babies, tears streamed down his face. I never thought I'd become a father again at this late age. The villagers generally looked upon this unusual family with favor. After all, children had been born, and Arthur, being financially capable, was contributing somewhat to the local economy. Occasionally, some would joke, What does that old man have that he got two young wives? How is that possible? But they didn't openly criticize. Every day was wondrous and precious for Arthur. When he woke up in the morning, he'd hear one baby crying and one wife rushing to soothe it. The other wife would be humming softly while preparing breakfast. This vibrant scene was something he could never have imagined during his solitary life back in Ohio. The thought, a person can be reborn like this, filled him with gratitude every moment. Of course, conflicts weren't entirely absent. When both babies cried simultaneously, when one wife wasn't feeling well, or when stress from other mundane matters piled up, they sometimes became sensitive towards each other. If Arthur paid more attention to one wife, the other might feel neglected. However, Tisa and Nai tried their best to resolve issues through dialogue, saying, "Fighting among ourselves is bad for the children." In this process, Arthur felt an even more profound sense of responsibility to truly love and care for both women equally. Time passed, and as the two children began to take their first steps, Arthur decided to invite his children from the US to see their grandchildren. Partly, he wanted to reduce the awkwardness between them, and partly, perhaps, he wanted to show them directly that he was living well. His children initially hesitated. "How can we go there? Isn't it dangerous?" But the youngest son was the first to decide, "Well, I've always been curious about Nigeria," prompting the others to join. Thus, the entire family gathered in one place after several years, albeit in a small village near Lagos. On the way from the airport to the village, the children's eyes widened at the unfamiliar scenery. "Dad lives in a place like this? I still can't believe it," they murmured, amazed. When they arrived at the house and opened the door, Tisa and Nai greeted them warmly. Behind them, two toddlers were crawling around. The eldest daughter saw the scene and muttered, "Are these really my siblings?" Arthur chuckled awkwardly. An awkward atmosphere lingered, but as Tisa and Nai served a carefully prepared meal and warm tea, the barriers gradually lowered. Especially witnessing the two wives' affectionate and sincere attitudes, the children began to feel, "This is different from what we thought. These women don't seem like they're just trying to exploit Dad." During their stay of several days, the children helped care for the babies, went to the market together to buy and eat local food, and grew closer. They explored the neighborhood, attended a village festival, and realized that their father had indeed established a life for himself here. The youngest son said frankly, "You seem much more energetic and happier than when you lived in the States, Dad. It's a bit shocking, but now I want to support you." Those words were the greatest comfort and support for Arthur. He gathered his children and told them, "I will use a large portion of my remaining assets for my life here, and I will gift small portions to you. But I won't hand everything over completely, because I need to build a more stable life with these children and my two wives." As expected, the children showed some disappointment, but they were already managing their own lives and weren't desperate enough to fight over their father's inheritance as before. Moreover, the new family they saw before their eyes was clearly not a fantasy or a scam. The babies toddled and gurgled under the sun, and both wives looked at Arthur with eyes full of love. After their visit, the children left, saying they felt they understood their father a little better now. Of course, not everyone back home would understand, but having at least his immediate children acknowledge and accept his situation was more than enough for Arthur. Subsequently, Arthur set up a small shop, commuting to a nearby town near Lagos. It was a sort of cafe and simple grocery store, run alternately by Tisa and Nai, catering to both locals and foreigners. They sold simple meals made by combining imported American goods with locally sourced ingredients, and surprisingly, it was well received. Meanwhile, as time went on, Arthur began to feel his physical limitations. In his old age, his body wasn't what it used to be. His blood pressure rose, causing dizziness, and occasional chest pains occurred. Whenever this happened, his two wives cared for him with utmost devotion, trying folk remedies, taking him to the local clinic for checkups, and adjusting his diet. Witnessing their dedicated nursing, Arthur felt he was receiving the warmest protection in the world. Time flowed relentlessly, and soon, the children born to Tisa and Nai reached kindergarten age. They learned the local language and English simultaneously. Arthur tried simple English conversations with them, and although stumbling, the children reached out, calling him Daddy. Seeing this brought tears to Arthur's eyes. The shop gradually expanded, becoming successful enough to open branches in a few other areas. Even without doing much himself, Arthur could live quite comfortably on his rental property income and the shop's profits. Money can't buy everything, but if it can at least make my family comfortable, I'm satisfied with that, he often said. While externally successful, inner conflicts didn't completely disappear. Some people in the village or city didn't look kindly upon the sight of an elderly white man living with 2 black women. Sometimes, passers-by would taunt, "Wow, old-timer, you really got yourself young wives. How is that possible?" But Tisa and Nai handled it with dignity. "Love knows no age, skin color, or race," they would say, paying no mind. Despite such ups and downs, the process of the 3 adults and 2 children becoming a family felt almost like a fairy tale. "All the loneliness and fear I experienced back in the States are being healed here," Arthur once murmured quietly, tears falling. Seeing this, Tisa and Nai simply held his hand without a word. That alone was warmth enough. A few more years passed, and Arthur became an old man well past 80. His body grew weaker, requiring frequent hospital visits and checkups. His children in America urged him, "Dad, shouldn't you come back now? You should receive treatment or care here in the US." But he firmly refused. "I want to live here with my family until the end. What meaning would there be in returning to the States now?" His children couldn't press him further. Having decided to spend the rest of his life in Nigeria, Arthur once again tidied up his financial affairs. He transferred partial ownership of his American rental property to his children in advance, keeping the rest in his name. The business, properties, and bank balances he had accumulated in Nigeria were divided into 3 main parts, one for living and education expenses for himself, his wives, and children, one as a stable foundation for his wives and children should he pass away, and a final reserve fund to be distributed little by little to his children and grandchildren in America. "I wasn't able to give you much as a father, but I'm giving you at least a minimal share. And I'm sorry, but I'm leaving the rest for my new family." His children initially felt disappointed but had already decided to understand their father and ultimately had to accept it. As Arthur grew increasingly frail, Tisa and Nai cared for him even more devotedly. They managed his medication, prepared light meals, and helped him rest comfortably in the shade of trees during the hot afternoons. The children, now in elementary school, would run around and then rush to him, asking, "Daddy, please read us a book." Though his eyes were dim, Arthur would read to them in a soft voice. "Daddy wants to live long enough to see you grow up well." Around this time, his American children visited Nigeria once more. They were worried after hearing about their father's declining health. This time, several grandchildren came along, and the house filled with a mix of American and Nigerian family members, creating a festive atmosphere. Arthur's American grandchildren played with Tisa and Nai's children, exchanging simple words in English. "You speak English well." "Yes, do you live far away?" Such cute conversations took place. Watching this scene, tears welled up in Arthur's eyes. "I never imagined I would build such a rich family." His children, witnessing this, once again realized the path their father had walked and how fulfilled he was now. That night, the family gathered in the front yard for a simple meal. Under the lights, Tisa and Nai skillfully prepared local dishes, while the children from America brought out some barbecue sauce and favorite snacks they had brought along. A table transcending 2 cultures was set. After a burst of laughter, Arthur began to speak in a slow voice. "Actually, I always feel sorry and grateful to you all. I might have upset you by living my own way, and perhaps if I hadn't made this decision, I might have lived more stably. But because I chose this path, nights like this, where I can laugh with all of you, exist, don't they?" His children quietly nodded. They now understood that instead of blaming or criticizing, it was far better to respect their father's final choice and share in the joy derived from it. After that, the years continued to flow relentlessly. Arthur's health deteriorated further, and sometimes he found it difficult to get out of bed. Tisa and Nai took turns staying up all night to nurse him. During those times, Arthur would weakly raise his hand to stroke the children's heads. "Don't worry. I'm happy just being able to see you by my side like this." Then one day, Arthur wrote a final letter to be left for his children. "I will stick to the path I chose until the end, and I have no regrets even if I am buried in Nigerian soil. If you can come to my funeral, I would appreciate it. And Tisa, Nai, please take care of these children. Part of my assets is already left for you, so please don't wish for more than that, just bless them. I love you." Arthur himself didn't know when this letter would be delivered. But with his remaining breath, what he wanted to protect until the very end in this world was love. Although it wasn't an ordinary path and certainly not one easily accepted in American society, the family he found in a foreign land demonstrated genuine love in their own way. More time passed, and the day came when Arthur closed his eyes and never woke up again. Even at the moment of death, Tisa and Nai were holding his hands tightly. The children touched their father's white hair and burst into tears. His children in the distant United States heard the news and rushed over, but he had already passed away. The funeral was held according to Nigerian tradition, simple yet heartfelt. Following Arthur's wishes, his children agreed to bury him there. The villagers, though perhaps still finding it peculiar, offered condolences and support. After all procedures were completed, the American children hugged Tisa, Nai, and the children one last time. "Thank you for being with our father. We hope you and the children live well." It was a tear-stained farewell, yet something infinitely warm remained. The family Arthur built was neither common nor followed an easy, smooth path. But at the very least, they loved and cared for each other sincerely. And the precious feeling Arthur wanted to protect until the end took deep root in that land. Later, Tisa and Nai continued to build a better life based on the inheritance and shop Arthur left behind. The children grew up embracing the cultures of both countries. Someday, when they grow up and introduce themselves, saying, "My father came from America and lived here with 2 mothers," people might be surprised. But the children would smile and say, "It was a truly wonderful love story. Our father was overjoyed at our birth." Contact with the children in the U.S. continued, albeit intermittently. They occasionally saw the 2 children via video calls, called them our siblings, and sent their regards to Tisa and Nai. Thus, the 2 cultures and 2 families remained connected. Regardless of how the world saw it, Arthur's choice was, for him, a strong and beautiful journey where he decided his own path in his one and only life. Rather than spending his final years lonely and frail in Ohio, he loved passionately like a final flame and was laid to rest in Nigerian soil. And those left behind recall his story and nod at his unconventional yet genuine courage. The message this story conveys to us is clear. Love can sometimes transcend common sense, confront prejudice, and blossom through all sorts of worldly barriers. And no matter how distant or arduous the path may seem, if hands are never let go, true happiness can seep in. So, some might say, was this really possible? It's unbelievable. But the life shown by Arthur, Tisa, Nai, and the children was certainly real. Though his life ended, the love contained within their home, their story, and their children's laughter surely continues under the Nigerian sky. A part of the last letter Arthur left reportedly read, "I realized late in life. If a person hesitates, they end up gaining nothing. I too carried many regrets, but looking back now, every moment was a miracle. The 2 people who came to me, and these children, what greater blessing could there be?" Like those words, his life was a leap towards the love and family that found him late. Not everyone in the world can choose the same path, but at least this story instills in us the hope that we can dare to open the door just once. Just because one is old or has failed before doesn't mean love won't find its way again. Ultimately, this entire narrative concludes with the small miracle left by Arthur Miller. The assets and story he left behind connected people across 2 continents, and Tisa, Nai, and the children remember him with unwavering affection. Some might call it a twilight romance and marvel, while others might shake their heads at its radical nature. But the truth is singular: Arthur smiled until the end in a foreign land before closing his eyes. And beside him, his 2 wives held his hands, shedding tears. Whatever anyone says, that alone is beautiful enough. There is no easy love in the world, which is why he was incredibly brave, remained passionate until the end, and ultimately found and walked his most authentic path. Therefore, we too learn from this story, life can throw us new beginnings at unexpected moments, and whether we seize that opportunity or let it slip depends solely on our own choice. And on the chosen path, whatever trials we face, if we open our hearts to each other and provide care, we can become family, no matter where that place may be. Thus, Arthur's decision planted American roots in a village on a distant continent and left a burning mark on the hearts of its people. And at the end of that road, he finally tasted the true happiness he had long craved before closing his eyes. Some might call it a forbidden and radical love, but those who witnessed his story firsthand say in unison, he was so earnest, and therefore, he lived more beautifully than anyone. This is the miraculous family story created by a 78-year-old American man and 2 Nigerian women, aged 22 and 21. Thank you for watching today. If you found the video beneficial, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment.